Welcome to the Win, Make, Give podcast. Chad Himes here, joined by one of my fellow musketeers, Bob Stewart. How you doing today, Bob?
I'm so glad Ben's not here.
Uh-oh. Why do you say that, Bob?
Because we can talk about him, that's
yes. Not like we haven't on other episodes before, not like during some of the interviews we don't talk about him, but this one's going to just be you and I. We don't have any other guests. It's going to be you and I having this conversation as, Bob, we wrap up the Traits of a Winner series.
Whoop, whoop.
Now, we've gone through the first 5 traits of a winner. Let me refresh everybody out there's memory if you haven't paid attention. First, we talked about practice. Then we talked about seeking knowledge. Number 3, Bob, we were patiently impatient. Number 4, we accepted responsibility. The 5th trait was we purposefully used time. And today, Bob, we're going to talk about winning trait number 6. What would that be?
Seek mastery.
Ooh, that just sounds cool, Bob. Now, before we get into what it is and the definition of it, let's talk about this series again. At the beginning of every week, we have sat down and talked about one of these traits. At the end of the week, we have had experts on who have talked to us. We've heard from, a Paralympic gold medal winner. We've heard from a professor. We have heard from a surgeon. We have heard from an Army Ranger. Bob, you're going to have to wait till the end of the episode to hear about who we're going to talk to about seeking mastery.
I'm glad you said that. I was about to drop it. Like, I'm excited for this, for the one on Friday.
Yeah, it is an exciting one. It's an out-of-this-world episode that we're going to talk about later. Bob, talk to me about seeking mastery.
I'll start with a quote from Albert Einstein, a guy who, I think many of us would think of as like a physics master or something, right?
Yeah.
But clearly, like, ascended to this level of mastery in his chosen profession. Einstein said, "Only one who devotes himself to a cause with his whole strength and soul can be a true master. For this reason, mastery demands all of a person." And Chad, when we get in here and start talking about some of the kind of the elements of seeking mastery, one of these deals specifically, I think, with Einstein's quote here, but the idea is, like, you got to be really committed if you want to become a master of something, right? And he says with all your strength and your soul.
All right. So, Bob, we love our definitions. Define for me mastery.
So the Oxford, Webster, wherever we get these from, right, says mastery is and there's 2 definitions. The first one is the comprehensive knowledge or skill in a subject or accomplishment. And the second one is kind of a little bit more, Chad, how maybe I think of mastery. I think a lot, but it's really an element of this second definition, but control or superiority over someone or something. So I think of mastery as being, the control or command or superiority of a subject, right? Like, obviously mastery has that someone element in the definition, but what we're talking about today is that superiority, control, and command of something, a topic, a skill, something that's gonna help you in your career or your home life or your leadership. That's really what we're talking about. It's this something that I'm gaining control over.
All right, so before we dive into all of this, Bob, I would hope everybody's been listening to every episode of Win, Make, Give, but every episode of the Traits of a Winner series, and they're going to have to go back and do those things to truly become a master. I mean, you've got to win to go through those things to become a master, and I know you've got a list of things that we should be focused on, yet I want to talk about what a lot of people probably just had come to mind when they heard master. And it's the first thing I think I have come to my mind, and that's Malcolm Gladwell's book, Outliers, where he talks about the 10,000-hour rule. Now, folks, don't go get crazy about it. We know that 10,000 hours, if you did 20 hours a week, is something like 10 years to do it. The rule has been busted, right? Mythbusters are not actually the Mythbusters, but there are enough people who have come out and proven it does not really take that. But that is a concept to comprehend of that's what you're talking about when you're saying we really have to commit to this, because it might not be 10,000 hours, but there's a lot of work.
Yeah, there's a lot of work that goes into mastering anything, right? I mean, I was thinking about this, Chad. Like, I'm probably a master of looking inside of a database in real estate and but I don't really know, I'm definitely not a master basketball player anymore, right? Or like we got Dave over here who we might consider a master guitar player, but there are very few people I think master something.
Absolutely.
Anything.
Dave, head nod, Dave, because they can't hear you. Would you consider yourself a master? No, and his head's quickly going left and right.
I consider Dave a master because if I picked up a guitar, it would
exactly.
be just
but he'd
disgusting.
go and listen to, I don't know, Eddie Van Halen recordings or something like that, and he'd say, no, there's a guy who's mastered this.
Yeah, so I mean, I think very few people get to this level of mastery, but we're constantly trying to hone our skills, sharpen our skills to approach mastery.
Sure.
Right? And that's really what this list of things is, how do we even start to approach mastery?
Yeah, and that's why we called it seek mastery, not obtain mastery.
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
Because we might not ever get there. I don't know that I'm the master of anything, Bob, and
we'll talk about a few people today that I maybe know. My wife is one that's mastered a particular skill, a very particular skill. And I think that, and let's just start. Let's go through the list, because I think the first one really kind of sets the stage for everything else behind it.
Absolutely.
And it's this idea that you need to, if you're setting out to seek mastery in something, you need to understand exactly what you need to master, right? Like which specific skill is going to pay you the most in your particular industry or make you the most valuable in that industry that you are a part of, right? And this, here's why, like, I had this yesterday. This actually happened yesterday, but it happens every other week, basically, in the industry that Chad that I'm kind of in my daily life in, which is the real estate industry. And there was a gentleman last night he was talking about he was running Facebook marketing, right? And he was asking for help from our community of how do I become a better Facebook marketer? And my comment to him, Chad, was, you know what you are? You're a FISBO. And in real estate, if you call a real estate agent a FISBO, they're like, wow, like it's an offensive
What's
thing,
that
right?
mean to everybody else,
For sale
Bob?
by owner, right?
Okay.
This idea that like somebody can sell their house and go out there and get more money because they don't have to pay the agent to sell it. But what studies have shown year over year for decades is when you sell for sale by owner, you end up netting less money than if you'd used a professional marketer, a real estate agent to sell your house. And so this guy's in there trying to run his own Facebook ads. And my comment to him was, like, let somebody else do that. Let somebody who's really good at that do that. This isn't the skill that you need to master to be a really successful real estate agent.
Sure.
Right? Like the prospecting skill is really what this guy needs to master. He needs to master, let somebody else generate the lead. I need to be able to get on the phone and turn that lead into my client. That's the skill that this guy should really be focused on. And so I think just at the very beginning, it's understanding exactly what you need to master.
I think that's a great point, Bob. And of course, you talk about in your industry or to make you valuable. It's also at home. It's also in your health. It's also in other areas. Where do you need to master? Because I'll tell you, folks, once you pick where you're going to become a master, you can be sure it will become your industry.
Yeah.
Right? If you have passion about your body, your health, right? And you go become a master of bodybuilding or a master of how to eat right, you can be sure people are going to start seeking you out, and that's going to become your industry. Yeah. You'll become a trainer.
Yeah.
If you want to be a master of, parenting and raising kids, now that's too vague an area, but you'll end up writing books about it. You'll end up being, on some talk show talking
people
about
will
that.
Seek you out for that knowledge that you've attained and that thing you've mastered.
So look at your world right now and maybe figure out, like Bob said, what skill would pay you the most if you mastered it? Yet if you're younger in life and you haven't even gotten into that part yet, what are you just passionate about? And Bob, you're going to talk about that again later. What are you passionate about? Because by becoming a master of it, it'll become your industry.
Yeah.
Okay,
all right. So next up, after we've kind of identified specifically what skill do we want to master or where are we really going to focus our attention, we have to avoid distractions.
Oh, come on, Bob.
All right.
That's not possible.
And there's two things I think about here, Chad. There's like tangentials. Is that tangential?
I love that you make up
skills
words.
that are tangential. They're closely related to the skill I'm trying to master.
Okay.
But those things can really cloud my ability to master something. Like if Einstein, when he was doing his theory of relativity, if he had been worried about, gravity or whatever, like, I'm not a physics guy, so I don't
we don't know. Maybe those do go together.
Right? Like, I don't know how close they're related specifically, but Like if he'd spent half his time in both, he wouldn't have mastered relativity.
Right. It'd be like if Eddie Van Halen spent his time playing guitar and drums and guitar, he's not going to become the master.
That's right. Now, maybe later he stacks on a skill to something he's already mastered.
Sure.
Right. But that kind of, master of, or jack of all trades, master of none. Right. Yeah. And I think we've got something kind of related to that a little bit later, but that's the idea. It's like even tangential skills. So when I think about the real estate agent I was talking to yesterday, who really should be focused on his prospecting
I hope
skills,
he's listening.
Right? That marketing skill, that's related to what he's trying to master.
Yep.
But when you divide your attention amongst these things, you end up becoming a jack of all trades, which in some, there's still a place for that person. But,
sure.
But they're not a master, right? They're not going to end up mastering any one skill if they're trying to master many.
Okay. So we've got to make sure what you're saying is that we're avoiding distractions. And you're not talking about the distractions of, and we've talked about this enough, my phone beeping at me. You're not talking about the distractions of, the dog walked by the window while I was working. You're talking about those distractions that we will justify as saying, I want to be a master of the bicep, so I should focus on the chest also because it's near it. No, be a master of the bicep,
right.
Then go learn about the chest and stack on those skills after.
Yeah. I think if you're trying to master 5 things at once, like you're not going to end up mastering any of those things.
Okay, awesome. All right, so we avoid distractions. What's next?
I think that we need to find the resources that we need to allow for that mastery. And here's what I mean by that. We need to find stuff to read.
Yep.
We got to find books to read on that subject, and we got to be dedicated to that being a part of the learning process along the way.
Would you say even reading books, Bob, that we don't agree with? Because we still need the content that's in there to either be able to argue or learn from or see a different perspective?
Absolutely. Okay. I think if you're trying to master something, you got to know every angle, even the ones that maybe you don't agree with. Absolutely.
So you're a money person and you want to master something, whether you're a Dave Ramsey fan, a Tony Robbins fan, you got to read all their books about it to learn.
That's right. When Ben talked about, he's mentioned this on the podcast as we're building the investment series out, like he knows all about real estate investing, but he had to go out and learn some of these other tactics that maybe he wouldn't put his money in.
So there's a great example. He's a master of real estate investing. Now he's taking the knowledge he has there and stacking on another mastery. He wasn't distracted. Okay, so we're going to find things to read. What else?
I think we're going to find things to watch.
Okay.
And, especially depending on what that skill you're trying to master is. Like, for example, we'll go back to Dave on his lifelong journey to master being, playing the guitar. He's going to have to watch some other guys do it.
Yep.
Right. And look, he can't even go to concerts these days, but he can go to YouTube and he can watch some other people. Right. And I think about like if sales is your arena, even watching, somebody like do their sales presentation and watching their body language and watching, look, a lot of our top-notch salespeople, they stand all day long. Right. Because just that movement of, if I was just trying to learn how to be a salesperson, I'd have to see somebody who was actually standing, right, in order to do that. So I think that there's this element of watch, right, videos, seeking out and educating myself visually, not just by reading it.
So you're going to keep going. You've got more than just read and watch, but you're talking about like that seek knowledge trait that we talked about.
Absolutely.
Winners seeking knowledge. That we've got to be doing that to be able to become a master.
Now, the difference between knowledge and mastery, Ben brought this up when it's funny because when we were kind of laying these out after we'd done the original episode that kind of laid out the 6 that now we're diving into, just a couple weeks ago, he said, well, what's the difference between seek mastery and seek knowledge? And you were like, I don't know, you made this list, right? But the reality is knowledge is just kind of this constant quest to learn more and more about a wide range of things, I think.
It's the flashlight versus the laser conversation that we've heard before. Focused beam of light can make damage.
Mastery is that focused beam of light, right? It's that we're not just reading everything we can get our hands on. We're reading everything Dave can find about how to be a better guitar player, right? He's watching every video he can find about how to be a better guitar player. And he's listening to something, right? So, we have time in our cars. We got time where we're working out or whatever, right? A lot of us are filling that time with music.
Yep.
A master, somebody seeking mastery, is probably filling that time with podcasts, listening to other people that have been where they want to go, right? That are masters of that thing already. So we've got to find something to listen to.
Okay.
I think. And
so read, watch, listen, and you've got a 4th on this list.
The last resource, and this hasn't been a thing for the last year necessarily, right?
True.
But it's participate. We have to get out into our industry or into the places where those other masters, the people that have gone before us might be, and participate, right? So I think about like conferences or paying to attend training sessions, or we send some of our developers every now and then. We're close to Seattle, and so we have a lot of conferences that come through around things that our developers are interested in, and so we seek those. We hope those guys are seeking mastery, and we'll send them down to those conferences so they can be around other people, they can network with other people that that are where they want to be.
Okay, so it's read, it's watch, it's listen, and when possible, participate.
Yeah.
Now,
Soon
Bob, there was another one from that seek knowledge that really comes forward if I want to become a master. And that was that ask, right? Always seek knowledge is what we said it stood for. But you're saying to become a master, we have to actually ask people to help us on that journey.
Yeah, I think so. And I think there's probably two kind of legs here, right? There's a mentor would be the first, right? Like, is there somebody, and look, maybe you want to be the best guitar player ever in the history of the world.
Correct.
Right? There's a path to get you to the step right before that. Because right now, somebody else is the best guitar player in the world.
Course.
Right? And if
Yep.
you're going to go to that point, and then you're going to have to figure out how to take that last step. But there's likely a mentor somewhere out there, but they're not just going to pop out of the sky, Chad, land next to you when you're sitting there struggling to figure out that next step and be like, hey, Chad, can I help you out?
Right.
You got to go seek that person out and ask for that help. I think about Ben. He's not here, so we can talk about him.
We get to talk about him.
He has his primary industry for years was real estate, and when he got ready to master the next element of his marketing business, he wanted to do radio and television ads. And so he could have done it from scratch, right? But he looked around in his world and he found a guy in Chicago named Ryan Dallas. And he went, he flew out there, right? He participated. Ryan. Yeah, Ryan, he flew out there. He met with Ryan. He spent a couple of days with him, and he asked, how have you mastered radio and television marketing, right?
Right.
And he learned all from Ryan. And look, Ryan was gracious enough to give him that time and to but most people will, Chad.
Of course.
Most people will be willing, if especially if they think that they can help you on your journey to where they are. Most people are willing to help.
Okay. So we have to be willing to ask.
Yeah, you have to be willing to ask. And if you don't, like, they're not just going to offer.
Okay.
Right?
Got it. All right, let's keep going, Bob. What else? If I want to seek mastery, I am on this path knowing I might never reach the destination. Yet I'm on this path for mastery. What's next?
Well, I mean, we did a whole episode on this one. Right? It's utilize or practice that skill every single day.
Sure. So basically what we're saying is if you did the first 5 things that a winner does, the traits of a winner, the first 5, you're on your path to seeking mastery.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. But here, you have to do it every single day.
Mm-hmm.
You have to do it every single day.
To be a master.
Yeah, think about Einstein's quote, right? You have to do it with your whole soul.
Yes.
Right? You have to be able to commit to that thing daily. And that's, as I think about my life, I can't think of anything I do every single day.
No. Breathing.
Right? I'm probably
breathing. I'm a master of breathing, Bob.
Yeah,
That's
sleep.
it.
I should.
I'm a really good sleeper, so I can say I'm a master
I'm a
of
master.
that.
My kids, this is crass, Dave. You can cut this if you want. My
you know he's not going to.
My kids say that all dad does is sleep and poop. Right? Like they're like, dad just sleeps and poops. And so and that's something I do every day. In their heads, I'm a master at that. But in all honesty, there's not much that many of us do every day.
No.
Right? But Eddie Van Halen played the guitar every single day, I'm sure of it.
Yes.
Right?
There's many stories about his brother going out and leaving him at home to play, coming home, and he's still sitting there playing. Yeah. Absolutely.
Kobe Bryant played basketball every single day. Maybe not later once he mastered the skill, but I guarantee in from the time that kid was probably 8 years old until he was really probably all the way through, right? He played every single day.
Sure. The best of the best. Michael Phelps swam every day. Until he didn't need to swim every day anymore.
Yeah, and we go back to Ben, right? Yeah. When he was starting his sales career, he was in there doing those prospecting efforts every single day. And if you sat with this guy, this is 15 years later, basically, right? Those skills he mastered 12 years ago or 15 years, he still has them.
Sure.
He still continues to practice them. Now, he doesn't have to practice them every day anymore once he's mastered them, but he still does have to continue to use them.
Right. And that's one of the beauties of it. Once you become a master or a chief, you don't have to practice every day anymore, but you definitely have to practice that passionately to get there.
I think, well, we'll see it in a couple more deals here. There is something you continue to do every day, I do believe, even if it's not practicing that skill that you've mastered.
Yep.
All right. The next one, the only way, Chad,
if you're going to practice every day, you have to be
obsessive.
Yes.
I really think that, like, in order to get to mastery, and it goes back again to Einstein's quote, it's like, you gotta love this thing. You gotta be obsessive about it. The definition of obsessive, by the way, is an idea or thought that continually preoccupies or intrudes on a person's mind. Like, if Dave doesn't wake up in the middle of the night thinking, oh, that's how you do that chord, right? Like, he's not gonna ever become a master at it because it's not something he's obsessive about.
Okay. So we've got to be obsessive, and that's that idea or thought that continually preoccupies or intrudes on a person's mind.
I grew up with a kid. He was about 5 years younger than me, who made it to the NBA, Chad. His name's Luke Ridnour, and he was a 6'2", white kid from Blaine, Washington, right? He went to small school. He was obsessive about basketball. Like, you don't make it to the NBA. Look, maybe you could be a 7'2", right? You could jump out of the gym and you make it to the NBA on athleticism. That happens every now and then. But, like, this kid was definitely not making the NBA without an obsession with basketball. That obsession, like, the kid slept with his basketball.
Right. And that's what you're talking about for obsession. Like, it's dark and mom's having to say, come inside, and you're still out there shooting even though you can't see the hoop.
There's I've been around a few athletes that have made it to really high levels in their game, and they're all almost a little weird. Like, I say that, like,
I think all masters are probably a little weird because they're obsessive about
so
whatever
obsessive.
it is.
Luke Ridnour's he's a great kid, great guy now. But that obsession, I have a friend who's right on the verge of making it to the PGA Tour. He's just been right there knocking on the door for a bunch of years. When you go hang out with this guy, all he talks about is golf.
Right.
You're like, Brian, dude, do you got anything else going on, And he doesn't. He's obsessed with golf. So there's definitely a level of obsession. And I think it's foolhardy to even think I could master something I'm not obsessive about.
You would have to be obsessive about it because you would have to have the passion that comes into it to want to master it, which means all you do is think about it. You've read everything. You know what's going, you are paying attention to it. And again, it doesn't matter whether that's basketball, like Bob likes to keep bringing up, whether that's a sales business and the skills that go to running a sales business, whether that's being a chef who's probably sitting there thinking about that recipe all day long, and everything they eat, they're critiquing it, and even if it's just in their head, they're always thinking about it. That's that person into fitness who's sitting there with every piece of food looking at it going, how does that impact me?
Like, you're approaching mastery.
I'm getting back
fitness.
to being a little obsessive where I'm coming in. My food is absolutely weighed.
Yeah, you're judging
Jolene
Dave
even
and I
said I'm giving you guys the looks.
Cokes.
Yeah, Jolene came in and said, you got any snacks over there? And I was like, no, these are weighed perfectly. You can't take one nut out of this mix. It'll mess me up on what I need to eat. It's becoming obsessive, which will lead towards that path to mastery.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So, Bob, now we go through all of that. What do we have to find next?
Leverage. And because if you think about what we just laid out there, it's like you don't have time to do anything else but master that skill. You don't have time. You're obsessive about that thing. And the reality is, no matter what you pick, and right, we started by picking some skill in our world, our industry that we want to master. That's not the only thing you got to do.
Right.
That's not the only thing you got to do.
Still got to do laundry.
Yeah.
Still got to go buy groceries.
So I think about my wife. She works for a company called Convoy. That's they're a multi-billion-dollar startup. They're a unicorn in their industry, right? The transportation industry. They're trying to digitize the freight industry in the United States. It's one of the largest industries left that hasn't been totally transformed by technology.
Okay.
And they got Gates and Bezos as backers and, hundreds of millions in funding and all this stuff. And she's on their enterprise sales team. So she deals with companies like Coca-Cola and Lowe's and her skill that she's mastered is prospecting and finding the exact right person in a massive organization that can write a check.
Okay.
And that like her entire career has been built in a sales environment around that.
Okay.
Right. Now she's got to do presentations. She's got to do, she's got to take all their data and crunch it down and turn it back to them and say, here's how we could help you. And she doesn't do all that. Right. She's got people that she leverages those things out to so she can hone in and find and go get that check signer.
Right. Bob, I had a skill. I was in the real estate industry for a long, long time. And my skill was the presentation. I could do a presentation and close. So the team that I was working with at the time took away everything else that I did.
Yeah.
They had someone else making the calls and setting my appointments. They had someone else doing the paperwork for the follow-up. They had someone else even negotiating contracts when they came in because they said, that's what you're a master of. Go do it, which is how I was doing 25 to 45 homes being listed every single month because I was just focused in my strength, but I had to have everything else leveraged. Even though I didn't leverage it, someone leveraged it for me.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And the reality is when you think about this, if you're obsessive about it, you figure out the right skill and you target it, you're going to want to get that other stuff off your plate.
Yes. Right? I absolutely want to get all that other stuff off my plate so I can go work out a third time every day because I've become a little obsessive about it. And you were talking about earlier that expression, jack of all trades, right? And that's what the expression used to be, just jack of all trades. Then they added to the end of it, to be clear, what we know it now is jack of all trades, master of none, right? And that's where you're talking about if we are that jack of all trades, we are not a master.
Yeah, and it's generally because those other things have to get done and we don't have any leverage to get them off our plate.
Right, so if we're going to become a master of something, we can't be that jack of all trades. We've got to find someone to help us with the other things going on.
Yeah.
Okay, let's keep going through this, Bob. I'm focused, right? I've got my area. I'm passionate about it. I'm obsessive about it. I'm reading everything I can get my hands on. I'm watching things. I'm participating when possible. What's next?
R&D.
Oh, one of our favorite expressions.
Yeah.
Bob, what's it stand for?
Well, it's not...
really? What's it really stand for?
Research and develop is what it really stands for. Right?
What do we
R&D.
think it means?
Rip off and duplicate.
There you go.
And here's... So you're going to find that... Well, I said this earlier. Like somebody has done what you're looking to do.
Yes.
Somebody's mastered that thing. And even if you're looking to be the best in the whole world ever at that thing, somebody's gotten to the point where they were the best ever, right? And you just have to take that last step. Just follow their plan.
Sure.
Right? Ben could have, I have no question, Ben could have created a really awesome radio and television campaign.
Yep.
Right? He didn't need to. Right? He realized there was somebody out there he could rip off and duplicate.
Right. And it sounds mean, rip off and duplicate, yet we do it with love.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We're not stealing information.
Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery,
There
Chad.
you go. Right. Well, I mean, and I take it back to the health world, Bob, as I seem to often do, of course. There's my obsession, right? And look at Peloton. Peloton has become a household name. Whether you have one or you don't have one, you either own one and you're a Peloton freak, or you're one of those people out there who makes fun of Peloton freaks like you and Dave make fun of me all the time, right? Or you're that third category, which is I had a Peloton and now I just leave clothes on it because I'm not using it well. That's the guy who's not here, right? But what's happened, we've had other companies pop up that are now ripping off and duplicating because they're realizing the benefit of the at-home workout. We have, whether it's Tonal, right, which has gone to the weight side of it, whether it's Nordic Track, who's now their bike does something a little different. It actually leans when you make the turn, so you feel more into it, and it works your abs, they say.
And that's
right? It's the rip off and duplicate.
But that's the second part of rip off and duplicate is tweak it.
Ooh.
Okay. So you're not just taking exactly what they did and just
they're already doing it.
That's right. They're already doing it. But look, maybe in some cases you would, right? Like, I don't know that Ben tweaked what he was doing too much at all, right?
Well, he had to tweak it because he had to say Bellingham instead of Chicago.
Sure.
So he had to tweak it.
Absolutely. Now, over time, he's tweaked it a little bit more, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But generally, you're not going to be able to find something somebody's doing that's exactly going to fit you. But we always talk about, let's take 80%, let's tweak that other 20,
right?
And maybe we end up with something a little bit better.
So Burger King ripped off McDonald's, but they made the Whopper instead of the Big Mac.
Yeah,
their hamburger's a little different, something, but it's
like
the
a flame
same.
broil, there's a little tweak in there, right?
There you go. Okay, so Bob, what about right? I'm a master now. Yay, me.
Yeah, you made it.
I made it. Right?
You don't have to practice every day anymore because that skill you've mastered it.
Okay,
right?
and we said you'll probably never really make it because it's a journey, not a destination. What do I need to know as I get maybe near the end of this destination?
It's kind of when you're living in that place where you're like, all right, things are going really good. Like I'm on the verge of mastering this. Maybe I have even, right? We could master certain things.
Sure.
It never ends. Mastery never ends. There's always when you're in that position, right? You need to be constantly aware of what's coming down the pipe.
Okay.
What's coming down the pipe? Pay attention.
So you're talking Michael Jordan, Kobe, who both mastered playing basketball, but they had to watch the way the game was changing.
Yeah.
That three-point shot was becoming a big, right? They had to be aware of that and say, ooh, I got to now add that to my game.
Yeah.
Okay, Ben had to start adding technology into the real estate stuff he was doing, for example.
That's right. So I think about virtual reality here.
Oh, it's everywhere.
It's everywhere, but it hasn't invaded yet, right? It's like, so we'll do this for real estate because I think this is so virtual reality right now. Like, look, Ben has mastered selling real estate.
Yes.
I really believe he's the number one team in the United States. They sold 6,000 houses last year, blah, 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 right? Like, they're not using virtual reality. We all know it's on the horizon, right? But we're sure thinking about what it's going to look like when it comes in, right? So we're paying attention to this thing. Like, I don't believe you have to be on the bleeding edge of everything to maintain mastery.
Okay.
Right? Like, we don't have to be out there right now trying to figure out how to use virtual reality and build a bunch of software around it, right? We can let other people do that we can let them kind of lead the way. And then once it's established, then we can step in. But we can't just step in if we haven't been thinking about how we're going to step in.
You know what comes to my mind is, again, I'm a movie buff too, right? Not an obsession. I'm not a master in that area, but I'm just a movie buff. I think back to when VHS, Betamax, right? And there was the battle between the two. And anybody who was they had to pay attention to what was coming, but they didn't necessarily have to jump in yet. They could see who was going to win the fight. And then Laserdisc came along, and then how quickly did that one go away, right? And then DVD came along, and but now the cloud, right? We have to be paying attention so that to be a master of what we're doing, we can travel with the trends as they show up.
Yeah, I mean, you could, like, in really extreme examples, you could go from Blockbuster, you could go from being the master, pay attention to what's happening, and all of a sudden you look up and you're like, wow, we're bankrupt.
Right. I don't want to go to the store anymore. I want it to come to me. Blockbuster said that'll never happen, looks up, and now there's one Blockbuster store left in the United States.
That idea that there's potentially disruptive factors out there, the reason you don't jump in all the time is because some of those things don't end up being a thing.
Well, wouldn't those be those distractions you talked about earlier? They're on the peripheral. We don't necessarily want to focus on those. We're focusing on what we mastered until it actually comes into our line of sight.
Yeah.
Okay. So now, Bob, I'm going through all of that. What's the last thing to do as I'm continuing to be a master?
When you get to that kind of stage where you're in mastery and you know there's maybe some things coming, and this is related to kind of that tweak things after you've R&D'd, but is the idea of tinkering. Try new things inside of what you're already doing well or what you've already mastered, right? Like so I go back to my wife here, and I mentioned she's a master of finding the person in the organization that's going to be able to make the decision.
Right.
And then, right behind that, she's a master of presenting the value of her company, of pushing on the pain points of that organization to try to align their pain points with what her company delivers. But she started tinkering with the delivery of that. She used to, it'd be like, well, she'd send them an email and a slide deck and a couple bullet points, and she's doing these videos now. Right. And look, my wife is beautiful, right? Like, I'm sure that's not hurting her at all, but she's doing this videos where she's got her leveraged team who makes these things look really slick, right? And she's using, the company she's trying to land, it's their logos all over this video, and it's their numbers in this video, right? She's like making it feel and look like she made this thing just for them, which she did.
Right.
It's just a new little tweak, a new little tinker that she's made inside of her process that she's mastered, right? She's mastered this process of how to find the decision maker, present the value, push on their pain points, and ultimately land these really massive contracts. She's tinkering now with something she's mastered.
And I'm sure there are, I'll go back to basketball again. When we talk, that's what triggers, right? You go back to someone like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, right? Let's go back a little bit in basketball.
You kids, do you know who that is? Do the kids know
Yeah,
who
the
that
kids
is?
might not even know who he was, right? But he was an airplane. He was the co-pilot, right? So there was a time he
you're
invented
old,
a
dude.
shot.
Airplane came out in like 1980
Yeah,
or
but
something.
hopefully they've still seen that
Kids
one, right? Kids hopefully have still seen that one. But Bob, we're in a position where he was a master of basketball. He was a master player at the time. And then what did he do? He tinkered and invented a shot.
Do you know why he did that? You know
I'm
why he did
sure
this,
there's
guy?
a great story behind why he built.
They outlawed dunking when he was in college. When Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was in college, they outlawed the dunk because he was so dominant.
It wasn't fair, huh?
So he created
The skyhook.
the skyhook.
Right.
That's right. He tinkered with his basketball game.
And I'm
Absolutely.
sure Eddie Van Halen, there's something that people now do on a guitar that is attributed to him because he became a master and then he tinkered and came up with this, oh, well, if you do this, and now everybody is caught
I
on.
think, like, I've mentioned a couple times, it's like somebody else has done that thing where they're the best, that they've mastered it and they're the best at that skill out there. It's the tinkering that's going to take you past them.
Right.
Right? It's like just emulate what they did to get there, right?
And then tinker
And then
better.
tinker.
Nice little touch to leave that with. You know, I want to leave everybody with a quote at the end of this Traits of a Winner series, and that is from Leonardo da Vinci. And can we agree he was a master?
He's a master. Yeah. At a few things, actually.
Yeah, he was a master at more than one thing. Yet Leonardo said, one can have no smaller or greater mastery than the mastery of oneself. And here at the Win, Make, Give team, Ben, Bob, myself, Dave, and the rest of the crew behind the scenes, we hope that you get the opportunity to become the master of oneself by taking the lessons that we've been bringing you, hopefully here through the Traits of a Winner series. We want you to know we appreciate you coming through this series with us. We'd love to hear your feedback in our Facebook group.
Wait, Chad, hold on. It sounds like you're getting ready to wrap it up. You told us we're going to have an out-of-the-world interview.
Yeah, I'm getting to that, Bob.
Okay,
Hang on. I want them to come join us in our Facebook group, facebook.com/group/win-make-give. You see, I knew they were going to hang on to hear who our guest was going to be. And I also want to thank everybody who has been in our Facebook group and has made suggestions for our donations this year. Because at Win, Make, Give, we are working on mastering the world of donations and giving. So with every listen, every episode gets in season 2, for the first 30 days, we will match and make a donation to a charity of your choice. Make sure you've joined us in our Facebook group when we ask for those organizations. Now, Bob, I gave you a little hint at the beginning of who was coming to the next episode, who the interview was going to be that would completely wrap up the Traits of a Winner series. And we couldn't think of anybody who had to master something better than an astronaut. And
what?
We went out and we found, and I had the pleasure of interviewing Lauren Shriver, who's been in space not once, not twice, 3 times,
That's
and he
awesome.
actually piloted and commanded the space shuttle. He wasn't just going along for the ride.
So he mastered, yeah. I mean,
He mastered flight.
He mastered flight. They don't let you in that seat unless you're a master
No,
of flight.
if you have not mastered flight, you are not flying into space. Now, folks, you got to join me for this interview and find out from Lauren if aliens really do exist, because he's been up there and he has a very interesting answer. So make sure you don't miss our next episode, that you have subscribed so that the episodes automatically show up on your podcast feed. Share it with everybody. And until our next episode, remember, as always, do good.